In this lecture, we're going to learn all about using addressables with remote content. With this, you can store your assets wherever you want. It can be your own server, some custom CDN, or a content delivery network, or perhaps using Unity's built-in solution called Cloud Content Delivery. What all these methods are simple ways for you to deliver updated assets to your players without having to submit a brand new build. So you just upload the asset bundle to a server, and the next time your players open the game, it will be using the updated assets. We're going to make this using addressables, which I covered in the previous lecture, so definitely make sure you watch that one before this one. I'm going to assume you already know the content in that lecture. So here is my simple demo scene. I can press a button, and yep, there you go, a character is spawned. This character is being loaded with addressables. For the setup over here, I've got an addressables group, and inside I've got the prefab. This one is marked as addressable. Then for spawning it, I've got this object with this script, as you can see as an asset reference game object for this addressable. And then the script simply listens to a key input and calls load asset async and instantiates the object. So all of this is pretty much exactly the same as in the previous addressables lecture. Everything is set up locally. Then the character is also using a certain material. So our goal here is to update this material without having to make a new build. So I want to be able to change the color or change the texture, then upload those changes to the cloud, and players will be able to see the updated material without having to download a brand new build. Okay, so let's do that. First thing we need is to set up addressables with remote distribution. So for that, let's go up here into Window, then the Asset Management, Addressables, and let's go into the Settings. So over here, the Settings. This contains tons of options related to addressables, and the one that we want here is under Content Update, we have the Build Remote Catalog. So let's make sure we tick this. Then over here under Build and Load Paths, let's make sure to select Remote. Okay, that's it. So now the next thing we need is on the group itself. So on the addressables groups window, you can either open it, go through here to groups. There you go, it's this window. Let's select the default group, the only one that I have right now. And then on the group itself over here, I also have the build and load path. So let's change this from local into remote. Note how each group can have a different path. Right now in this demo, I just have one, just the default group. But if you have multiple groups with different assets, you can mark some of them as remote and some of them as local. Then also another important option is the one up here, the update restriction. Basically this is so you have more control over the generated asset bundles. If you have something that you're unloading that is core to the game and is never going to change, then you can make it cannot change post-release. But in our case, we do want to see the material changing, so let's make sure this one is set to can change. Okay, so with this, everything is already set up to download assets from the cloud, but we still haven't defined exactly where that is. So for that, let's go into the profile. We can either over here on the groups window, click and go into manage profiles, or alternatively through window, asset management, let's open up the profiles. And yep, here it is, and by default it has the default profile, and you can obviously create some more. This is where profiles are quite useful. You can make a testing profile, a production profile, and so on, each of them grabbing the assets from a different location. Now in this case, for a simple example, let's just stick with default one, and then let's log in here. Well, we want to change the remote, so let's change this. To be able to write a path, let's click on the drop-down menu, and instead of going with built-in, let's go with custom. Then you can input the actual paths you want to use. Now the build path, this one is the path where the files will be built. And actually, if you leave this on default, but then you change the unload path, if you do that, that actually causes a strange error. So we do need to change this. And then the unload path, this is where addressables will actually grab the assets from. So this is where we're going to need the URL for the server. Also a quick explainer on the syntax here. The rectangle brackets, these ones, these mean that this field is going to be interpreted at build time, whereas these ones, the curly brackets, these ones mean that it's going to be interpreted at runtime. If you want to see where these two paths are, we can just do a log. So let's just copy this. So up here on the script, let's just do a debug.log. Okay, like this, let's just see what these two contain. And yep, here we can see the defaults. So by default, it goes inside the library, addressables, AA, and Windows. But like I said, let's change it. So let's make sure this one is on custom and let's modify these ones. First of all, for the build path here, now you can use whatever path you want. For me, I'm going to call it server data. This is where we're going to compile the build that we're going to need to upload to the server. And then after we make the asset bundles, we need to upload them to some remote location. In my case for testing, I'm going to use my own web server. Now, obviously, a web server is not the ideal remote location. You want a proper CDN for this kind of use case. But for testing, I'm going to use my web server, so I'm going to write my URL. So just inside my website, unitycodemonkey.com, and then inside the addressables folder. Okay, so that's it. That's the setup. We're going to build our asset bundles. They will be placed in this location. Then we upload them to the server, and then when playing, the game will grab them from this location. So now let's actually build the files that we're going to upload. And this is actually a very tricky thing that drove me crazy for quite some time. So with everything set up, you might think you can close this and then go up here into build and make a new build. You might think to do this and then afterwards go make a regular player build. Except nope, if you do that it won't work, because when you make a regular player build, it automatically makes a clean build. So if you do that, you actually end up with two separate addressable builds that are not connected to one another. But let's still do this, just see the problem that I'm talking about. So over here on the groups window, let's go into build, make a new build, a completely brand new build. Let's make it. And there you go, it starts building the build. Now let's go into the path that we defined. So here I am inside the projects folder. And over here, I've got the server data folder, and inside, yep, here's the files. Now again, make sure you are in the project folder and not inside the assets. It's not over here, it's one level above on the actual project folder. So we have the server data, which is the path that we defined, and inside we've got all of the files. Then you can look, you can see that we have a JSON. This is the actual catalog for the files. It has a JSON with all data. It has a simple hash just to test if there's any changes. And also, of course, the actual bundle containing all of the assets. However, now let's see the problem that I was talking about. So if you do this, if you first make a clean build through this method, and then after that you make a regular player build. So let's do that. Let's go into build, build settings, select Windows, make sure the scene is loaded. Okay, let's make a build. Okay, so here we have the build, and now we can look, and yep, here we do see the problem. Catalogs are how the addressables finds the assets, so when updating them you must reuse the same catalog. But as you can see, by making the clean build and then the actual player build, by doing that, we actually end up with two catalogs. So if we now were to update the previous catalog, everything would break because we're not updating the actual catalog that the build is using. So this is the actual thing that drove me crazy for quite some time, so hopefully you won't fall into this same issue. If you make a new player build, it automatically builds a clean new addressables build. So basically do not go here and manually make a clean build. Instead, just make a player build and then use that and only go through here to update a previous build. So let's just delete all these files to do everything again. So I'm going up here, I'm going to delete everything. Then over here, I am not going to go through this process. Instead, just go and just make a regular build. So let's click. Okay, so here is the build and here is just one catalog. Okay, great. So now here I'm using WinSCP, which is the regular program that I use for an FTP connection to upload files to my server. So with this, I created a folder in my server and I'm just going to upload everything. Now, importantly, do not upload the files directly. Make sure you include the actual standalone build folder. So I'm just going to drag and upload the folder itself. And okay, everything is uploading. Okay, everything worked. The files are on my server. So with this, everything should be working. The build should connect to the server, download this asset bundle, and use those assets. One very important thing about the system is we did not have to touch the code at all. All the code stays exactly the same. We don't need to write any different code to make Addressables remote. So all that's left is just run the build. And now I press a button, and yep, now it's downloading in the background from my server. And yep, there it is. Here is the character. All right, awesome. So we made our build, then using Addressables, we downloaded the character from a remote location and spawned it in our game. Now let's see the main purpose of this, which is updating assets without having to update the build. For that, here in the editor, like I said, let's say we want to modify the material. So let's go and just tint this with a different color, let's say with red. Okay, that's it. That's the only change that I want. Now with this, we can make another asset build. So now we go through the build menu up here, and we do not make a new build. Instead, we update a previous build. If you make a new build, it's going to break the connection to the already made player build. So if you do that, then you're going to need to make a brand new player build. So do not do that. Instead, let's update a previous build. Then over here, it asks you to locate the bin file. And this one is actually not in the server data folder that we made previously. Instead, it is here inside addressable assets data. Then in this case, it's inside Windows, and over here, the addressable content state.bin. Okay, so let's select this. And yep, it's currently updating the previous build. And that's it, it's done. And in the folder here, we can see, yep, it did work. So like I said, it did not create a brand new catalog. Instead, it just updated and overwrote the previous catalog, and then also created a brand new asset bundle with the brand new files. Again, this is very important. If you somehow end up generating a brand new catalog, then things are going to break. So if that happens, something went wrong. In this case, everything went correctly. It overwrote the previous catalog and generated just a brand new bundle. This is what is supposed to happen. So now with this, let's do the same thing. Let's just upload the new files to the server on the same location. Then let's make sure we overwrite the changes. And alright, everything went correctly. So the server now has two bundles, the old one and the new one, and it also has just one catalog. So just one catalog with a JSON and a hash file. And now with this, we can play our game to see the changes. Again, we don't need to do a brand new build of the player. So let's say this build was already on Steam server or on the Play Store. So without changing anything on the player build itself, let's open it. And now here, let's press the button to load the character. And yep, here is the updated character with the brand new material that we just uploaded. Alright, awesome. So with this, we managed to update the assets in our game without having to update the build itself and going through any kind of review process. We just made a brand new asset bundle, uploaded it to the server, and now the players are going to be seeing the updated assets. You can modify whatever addressable assets you want. As long as you are using the same catalog, everything will work. For example, let's reset the color to white, and instead of just modifying the color in the material, let's reference a different texture. Okay, that's it. So again, let's update our build. So let's go into build, update a previous build. Just select the same one. So here it is. Once again, we still have the catalog, which has just been updated. And a brand new bundle was generated. So once again, let's copy this to the server. Okay, it's all there. Now let's test again. Here I am playing the game, press the button. And yep, there it is. The character now has a different material and a different texture. Okay, great. Now let me show you just one more thing, which is how you can test addressables while over here in the editor. If I make a change here, like in the editor, I'm going to make a change and make the color into a green, something like this. But now I don't make a new build, I don't update this data in the server. So the server still has the material color in white. Now if I hit on play over here in the editor, yep, there it is, the character is showing green. So it's using the local state and not the assets from the server. In order to make the editor grab assets from the server, let's go up here onto the play mode script. And instead of using the asset database, let's swap to use existing build. If we do this and now we hit on play, and yep, now it is correct. Even though the local material is set to green, now it's downloading the white material from the server instead. Alright, so as you can see, it's super easy to make addressables work with a remote location to download assets from any server. And like I mentioned, that server can be anything you want. In this case, just for testing, I used my own web server, but obviously in a proper use case, you would use some kind of proper CDN. The only change you need is really to change the URL in the addressables profile. That's really it. For CDNs, you could use AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or a million others. But Unity also has their own CDN, which is made to work with addressables in a super easy way. So let's see specifically how to use Unity's Cloud Content Delivery in the next lecture.